Hello there.
Hello.
Hello, lovers. Lovers and friends and lovers. And thank you for joining us. This is 5 Minutes with Robert Nasir. I am your aforementioned Robert Nasir. I am joined, as always, by the lovely, gracious, and unusually sexy Amy Nasir. And all of you sexy people.
All you sexy people out there. Yeah.
Today is Sunday, July 11th, 2021. It's 7/11. 7/11, the 192nd day of this, your best year yet. 173 days remain to make it so. 167 days until Christmas. 112 days until Halloween. We're getting close enough that it almost makes sense to do that countdown, and whether it makes sense or not, we will. And this is episode 71. Episode 71, 2 episodes after episode 69. And we are just about ready to make that happen. Let's do part 2. Let's do it again. But first, on this date in 1804, the Vice President of the United States, the Vice President shot and killed the former Secretary of the Treasury. How is that a thing that happened?
Well, please explain to us.
Well, in one of the most famous duels in American history, Vice President Aaron Burr fatally shoots his longtime political antagonist, Alexander Hamilton. Hamilton, a leading Federalist and the chief architect of America's political economy, died the following day. That famous duel between Hamilton and Burr on this date in 1804. Also in 1960, To Kill a Mockingbird was published. 34-year-old novelist Nell Harper Lee, pen name Harper Lee, publishes her first novel, To Kill a Mockingbird. Outstanding book. It's one of those books you get assigned to read in school that was actually worth reading. It wasn't, Lord of the Flies or something. Or what's the other one with Holden Caulfield in it? Not Of Mice and Men, but anyway, no. To Kill a Mockingbird.
Grapes of Wrath.
No, but yes. So anyway, Harper Lee, To Kill a Mockingbird, anniversary of the publication, and you should read that. An outstanding book. Also, happy birthday. And here we get a little closer to the subject at hand. Happy birthday to the richest openly gay person in the world. Italian designer Giorgio Armani.
Oh, very nice.
Turns 87 years old today.
How lovely.
Happy birthday, Giorgio. Just last month, he was estimated to be worth $9.53 billion.
I love to hear about this mass of wealth that people have.
Yes.
And because it doesn't mean it's taking from anybody else, it means that that person actually created that amount.
Exactly right.
Yeah.
Exactly right. Recent post on the social networks about wealth and wealth inequities, and what people fail to understand is guys who get enormously wealthy, especially based directly on their creation.
Yep.
And in Giorgio Armani's case, it's not just his designs, but his entire empire he built, and which eventually became whole businesses and galleries and fragrances and everything. He created all of that. It was taken from nobody. Love, love, love it. Also, it is 7-Eleven. And if you are a fan of the 7-Eleven Slurpee...
If you have one on your street corner
somewhere.
Yeah,
well, they changed it. Because I was all prepared to say, well, it's 6 o'clock on the East Coast. You only have 1 hour left to go get your free Slurpee. See, it used to be from 11 o'clock in the morning till 7 o'clock at night. You could go to any 7-Eleven on 7/11, July 11th, and get a free Slurpee, but they changed it. Now what you need to do is download their app on your phone.
Okay.
And they'll give you a coupon for a free Slurpee any day of this month. So July's wide open. Go get yourself, if you haven't already, a free Slurpee. I mean, it's not like they really cost much, but any reason to go out and get yourself a treat is a good reason. Mm-hmm. 2 things real quick here, because these are also going to be related to our topic at hand. It's also National Cheer Up the Lonely Day.
Mm-hmm. Let's try to cheer up the lonely. If anyone's out there who is lonely, we want to hear it. We're going to cheer you up.
We're going to cheer you up. Yes. In fact, at the very first concert that Trevor ever played,
Back in the early 80s, right?
that's right, my teenage band, we did have a guest singer. We did a cover of the Motel song "Only the Lonely."
Oh, right.
So, Marcy, if you're out there and listening, we remember.
That's right.
And your vocals got better over time. I don't know that our playing ever did, so it was kind of rough. But we did do it, and only the lonely can play indeed. Today is Cheer Up the Lonely Day. So visit somebody who's lonely, or call somebody who's lonely, or if you're lonely, reach out.
Yes. Don't just sit at home saying to yourself, I'm a burden. No, just text somebody, ask them if they want to chat, and get on the phone or get on Zoom or however.
One of the best things you can do for a person is reach out to them.
Yes.
And let them know, hey, here's an opportunity for you to do me a solid. Whatever that means. People say that thing. To do me a favor, to help me out. And
to make boy makes good. That's another strange
boy makes good.
Yeah, that's an old one.
I like the idea of making good.
Yeah, making good.
Like making good on your ideals, your goals, your promises. I like that. So there's a link in the show notes to advice if you want to celebrate Cheer Up the Lonely Day, and you can do this all week. Deliver a few spare magazines to an ailing friend, watch a movie with somebody, share some freshly popped popcorn, one of our favorite foods
ever.
God, at this point, I think we eat popcorn more days than we don't. Read a book out loud to your friends, set up a playlist of inspirational music, etc. There's so much good stuff on there for Cheer Up the Lonely Day. And finally, one of our friends posted it's National Rainier Cherry Day. I hope I'm pronouncing that right. Yeah, it's the day to celebrate Rainier cherries, those kind of orange and red ones?
Yeah.
National Rainier Cherry Day. So pop a cherry in your mouth. Now, it's National Rainier Cherry Day. It's Cherry Day on the same day that it's Cheer Up the Lonely Day.
Yes.
Well, that takes me back 2 weeks to episode 69, in which we talked about romance, love, and sexuality.
SEX, you mean?
Heavy duty Judy. We have got some things to cover. What happened is we got to the end of the episode, and folks who've heard the episode or who were there live, and that's our favorite because we love people in the chat talking back to us.
And we have a lot of people actually on YouTube right now.
Well, then and a few people have already asked me about it, that we promised a part 2. There were a few things I was determined to cover, except I'm not a determinist. There were a few things I was determined to cover that I did not cover. We're going to get to them today.
Yes, and I have some notes as well. Mm-hmm.
And this time, Amy has notes of her own, and I haven't even read them. I have no idea what she's about to give to you.
I'm going to spring it on ya.
Ooh, sounds good to me. We'll see how she delivers that. We had there was a post on Facebook.
Robert, your tone of voice.
Yes.
Okay, keep going. Just.
What is my tone of voice? Sorry, I'm not aware.
It's filled with innuendo.
Oh, well.
But that's okay. That's okay.
Sorry. Let me know if I'm too irreverent for the topic at hand. Too much innuendo.
Mm-hmm.
So, the post that came up said, "Prove to me you are a man or a woman without referencing your body." Well, this is fun because, you do a whole post about, I've changed my own motor oil, or I refuse to ask for directions when I'm driving somewhere.
Or my favorite color is pink.
Yeah, prove to me you are a man or woman without referencing your body. As I've said before, I love the very fact of sex and sexuality and gender, whether you regard that as distinct or not. And all of the glories and conflicts and the passion and fireworks and fun and foibles which flow from being part of a sexually dimorphic species. And for what it's worth, which probably isn't the 2 cents that people would offer me, I think our leaders and our thinkers who are going to lead us out of the past and present conflicts, the ones who are going to lead us out are neither the reactionaries nor the third wavers. And we talked about this last time, the crazies in the conservative side and the crazies in the moderns. The people who will lead us out of these conflicts And one of these conflicts arose out of this post on prove to me you're a man or woman. The people who will lead us out of this are the ones who most deeply love and rationally understand and genuinely respect and joyously celebrate people in general and human sexuality in particular. And that's why I had to do this part of this show, is because this to me is crucially important. Not just because I think sex is crucially important, but because I think sex and romance and love and all the ways in which people connect are the most important part and the solution to the contemporary culture war. We're going to come back to that. It might be naive on my part, but that's what I see winning, if and when anybody is winning, in just about every issue these days.
That's very true. I mean, to stop categorizing people, stop, throwing labels on people, saying us versus them all the time. It's important to celebrate what makes a human being. And one of those things is obviously we are the sexiest species on the planet. Number one, we're the most interesting. We are the the most vivacious, the most colorful, the most delicious people or creatures on the planet. So
yes,
and that's definitely something to celebrate. Now you haven't yet actually talked about the most important thing we need to talk about.
What is the most important thing we need to talk about?
How many days are there to Halloween?
You must have been reading your notes when I said there are 112 days until Halloween.
I completely missed it.
Well, you've been reading the chat there, which is good because we got to keep up with that.
Yes, and we do have some things. So
yes.
Yeah.
So I'm going to read off of the 6 points I am determined to cover today. Crinkles the paper there. I'm going to read off number 1 and why it's important. Number 1, everything is sex. I mentioned that last time. Everything is sex.
Yeah, I mean, if you want to think, where does the human world come from? Everything comes from sex. So there you are.
Well, that too.
That too.
But also what makes everything worth living.
Yes.
Now, I have to cover something that will sound unrelated and maybe even sad, because I know people for whom this is an issue and something that needs to be covered. Well, what about asex? The asexual, the people who don't experience significant sexual desire or feelings. And what about asexuals in a hypersexual world? Well, I've been asked about that. Being a man of some degree of wisdom, or maybe just people figured, Robert's crazy enough, he might have an idea. And my answer to the asexual, the people who find themselves in that position, is that everything is sex. I mentioned before that if you're a married person, try holding hands with an attractive man or woman who is not your spouse. And watch your spouse's reaction. I hope they have a reaction. I'm sure they will have a reaction, because holding hands isn't just holding hands. It is holding hands. And hugs are just hugs, but they're also not just hugs. And kissing, I've got a whole post on kissing we need to talk about. I said before, any philosophy that excludes kissing is not a real philosophy. And people said, there's no philosophy that excludes kissing. And you talk to the determinists who think they have an evolutionary psychology explanation for kissing that has nothing to do with romance or affection or even familial feelings.
Right.
And all of these things are on, I hate the idea of a continuum, but on the scale, they're in there. In life, there isn't sex, and then there's this other stuff that's just affection. Everything is romance. Everything is love. Everything is sex. And so for my asexual friends, my friends who believe that they are not part of the sexual world, in a sense, you're right. And I don't mean to discount the experience that you have, but in another sense, if you can still experience the pleasure of a hug or a handshake,
or an elbow, elbow rub.
Elbow. Let's do the elbow here. Ooh. No, but seriously.
Yes.
If you can still experience any degree of pleasure, even if you're not a hugger and you find hugs uncomfortable, if you can experience any degree of self-pleasure, even if it's just rubbing your own feet or running your hands over cloth or anything like it, realize that's on a scale, it's on a continuum, it's not disconnected. You are not alienated from pleasure. And I've known people, again, in the asex community who talk about that, and a lot of people will acknowledge we're not anti-hug, we're not anti-affection. We just don't express sexually. And that's great, but I think to the degree we realize these are of a kind and on a scale, there is no reason to feel alienated from the sexual world. If I was a therapist, I could do a better job giving advice to people, but that would be reckless of me, so that's all I'm going to say. Well, but I think it's important for people to realize that when you go out to get a pedicure, there's a pleasure in that.
Right.
When you get a haircut and your hair is washed, there's a pleasure in that, and there's no reason to say, although this isn't sex and I'm not having creepy thoughts about my hairdresser, it is sensual and you want to enjoy that. You want to experience that pleasure. You don't want there to be anxiety about, well, what is sex? What isn't? Is this right? Isn't this right? It's all good.
Right. A couple things that I'd like to point out on that issue is, well, I always think of, in terms of asexuality, I think of of Temple Grandin. If you remember, you know, the lady who revolutionized the
animal husbandry.
Yeah, and how she was adverse to physical contact, but at some point she ended up figuring out how to kind of, I don't know what the exact term is, but the only way I can say it, which is a little silly, is give herself a hug by kind of patting herself around herself to make her feel less anxious.
Yes.
When she was younger, especially. And the other thing, actually, there's two more things. Any child will self-pleasure. Will, you know, most at least. I mean, it's something that you do, whether it's, you know, you're just kind of, you know, giving yourself sensations with your fingertips or whatever it is, giving yourself a foot rub. You learn to do that. At least, hopefully you do.
Well, and hopefully you're never shamed for it.
Exactly. And thankfully, my mom did not shame me. You know, and there are young children who do masturbate. And they touch themselves on their sexual organs. And, you know, this is something that, as a human being, you need to do, because everything that you do, everything that is in your world, everything that's part of your body, it needs to be conceptualized. It needs to be discovered. You need to know how it works. You know, hopefully, you know, not only do you know you know, what your sexual organs do and how they function and what they're capable of, you also know, you know, how your digestive system works. You know, biological things that you should know on a medical level. And number 3, if I can remember it now, it was about, when I was a teenager. So for 2 years as a teenager, and this is after, you know, I was sexually active, I decided to be celibate. And at the time, you know, asexual, and I think Atlas spoke here in the chat, mentions phrases like demisexual or demi-romantic or gray sexual. I'm not sure what all those mean, but I decided to be celibate for 2 years because my very first romance or boyfriend sexual experience didn't go well. It kind of, this is the relationship I got out of once I read the Susan Forward's book, Men Who Hate Women and the Women Who Love Them. And learned about self-esteem and codependency and the kinds of things people do to hurt each other, especially if you claim to love with somebody. So after that, I decided I would take a break, and I would just, not get into any other relationships after that. And so it was about 2 years that I was. So I don't know enough about how people consider themselves to be asexual to know what their reasoning is.
Well, there are multiple reasons.
Yeah,
because
I'm sure there is.
Sometimes it's trauma-related. Sometimes it's related to low sex drive.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes it's other types of psychological alienation.
Yeah.
And that's why I kept my comments very general.
Yes.
But my whole point, again, when I say everything is sex and sex is everything, but what about asexuality? Again, that's a very low end of the scale. If there are people who can't experience pleasure in simple physical things, like food or simple touch, fabrics, people would be at the lowest end of the scale. My whole point is it is a scale. There's also the hypersexual people out there who say they can't control themselves because they're at that other end of the scale. And if so, those folks need to get help, because if it reaches the point where it's pathological and free will, your ability to make choices is no longer effective, then again, that's another end of the scale. Most of us, including most of the people that I know in the asex community or asexual community, are somewhere in the middle. Now, they might be in the middle between 2 and 98, but there's very few people at 0 and 100. If you're there, presumably you're already seeking help for that. I'm interested in the folks who can get something out of what advice I would have to offer. I'll put it that way. Mm-hmm. So what's interesting is this ends up being related to virginity.
Virginity.
And
Ooh.
Chastity.
Yes.
So, number 1, everything is sex. Number 2, chastity and virginity. I'm going to take just a moment to look at the chat, because there's some great chat out there. And I'm especially enjoying the fact that the chat is equally divided between Facebook Live and YouTube. And I really appreciate that. As folks know, we're trying to get our YouTube numbers up. So thank you for participating on YouTube. If you're on there too, if you could, please like the show if you like it. And of course, at the end, we'll say share the show and do all the things. A lot of interesting questions and comments came up. Chandler said, do most men prefer a female masseuse over a male one?
What do you think, Robert? You're a man.
I am one of those men who suffers from homophobia.
Really?
Now, I'm kidding, of course. I'm being deliberately provocative by using that word.
That's news to me.
But I definitely would prefer, or I wouldn't want a male masseur.
Right.
I would need a female masseuse. Or if I got those backwards.
I'm not sure.
In any event, yeah, I'm one of those guys who does not as much enjoy being touched by a man as a woman, even in a non-sexual context like a masseuse, masseur, reflexology, even a hairdresser. Now, I've certainly had men, wash and cut my hair before. It's a very different experience. Now, I don't know if I could answer the question, do most men ...
Yeah.
I don't know if most people are like me. I'm guessing since Chandler asked the question, he also is like me in that regard, or at least to some degree. Maybe folks can tell us in the chat. And it's interesting because I've talked to women about this too, and women sometimes, but not always, have the same reaction. I've noticed women don't seem quite as skittish about having a same-sex masseuse, masseur, hairdresser, hair shampooer, reflexologist.
Yeah, for me, masseuse would need to be probably a lady, and
it's very interesting.
Yeah, and I would say 99% of my doctors are female.
That's the other question. Is there are women who shudder at the idea of a female gynecologist, and there are other women who say no, that can only be a female. So that's interesting to me too.
Yeah. No, that's that's in my case only be a female.
Yes.
I don't. I just, you don't take your car into what's it?
Mechanic who's never driven an automobile?
Right, or
owned one?
Or into the train station. You don't take your car to the roundhouse where they work on trains.
That's the last consideration I would have had, but it makes perfect sense. You're right. If you've never owned one, you probably don't know how to work on it.
That's,
I didn't even think of that. I was thinking more that the kind of exams a gentleman gets, especially as they get older. I've never had a female doctor perform that kind of exam, which you would think somebody like me, that would make me uncomfortable. But to be honest, I'd be concerned about having a woman perform an exam like that. I'd be fearful of the gallant response, as it were.
Yeah,
so that could be hard.
I should say I know a lot of women who prefer a male OBGYN.
Okay.
Yes.
So Chandler, that was a great question without a simple answer.
Yeah.
And lots of opportunities for puns, only a few of which I could not resist. So, yes, thank you for that. So much other stuff going on in the chat. But let me get to number 2, Chastity and Virginity, because I have to say, in any conversation we're going to have about sex, romance, sexuality, and culture, y'all who want a virgin are nuts. Now, I was a virgin once, and I've been with virgins, and there's nothing wrong with that. But this idea that I thought this was gone, because when I was young, it was like,
it's not gone.
You date a gal who sleeps around because that's fun, but you marry a virgin. She's marrying material.
She's crazy.
And the crazy thing is, it's 2021. We have all these modern ideas about sexuality and hookup culture and the game and all the crap that people think is going on out there. And yet, people still think, I don't want to be with a girl who's been with a lot of men.
It's mind-boggling.
It is mind-boggling.
To think that, people actually... I know, because, all right, I was raised Catholic, so, there was a lot of that going on. I should say, the same year that I was confirmed in the Catholic Church, I became an atheist. So I was able to question that really early on, and everything early on. So I was very fortunate to have that happen that way. But virginity, again, as children, you're not virgins. I mean, you have sensual experiences and sexual experiences, or at least a little bit, or at least some kind of figuring out when you're young, when you're at the age, whether that's between in your teenage years, you get to that point and you find somebody to make love to, have sex with, lose your virginity with. However, it's ridiculous, because even at that point, even if you've never actually touched sexual organs with another person, you still know more than what I guess the Catholic Church would deem to be virginal.
Yes, well, to have lustful thoughts is to have committed lustful acts.
Right.
We all know that a man who looks at a woman with lust in his heart has been unfaithful.
Yeah.
Crazy. But a cultural norm, so much of that comes from religion.
Yeah.
Some of it comes from other aspects of culture as well. With a name like Nasir, I've at least a passing idea of what folks in the Middle East think of these things. And the idea of virginity as I just can't imagine going in to get a job somewhere and saying, "Hi there, my primary virtue is that I've never done this before and I have no idea what I'm doing." It's just bizarre. And there's nothing wrong with virginity. And being in that state and then gaining experience can be one of the most beautiful things in the world. I have to say, unlike what Amy said, that, it was just a magnificent experience, and beautiful and wonderful and exciting and strange and all of the things. But the point is, there was nothing virtuous about having never engaged in sexual activity. And just like we talked before about, a lot of people don't even agree on what sex is. A lot of people don't even agree on what virginity is.
Right.
I knew when I was young, so just a couple of years ago, I knew women who were virgins in fact, but not at all in spirit.
Right.
I think of the Billy Joel song.
Yeah, actually, Mary Elaine mentioned
Only the
that.
good die. Oh, okay, good. That's
Yep.
apropos of the topic.
Yeah,
you Catholic girls start much too late, but for that reason, the things that the Catholic girls were willing to do, and you want to call those girls still virgins? Anyway, the point is, it's all bizarre.
Silly. It's just silly.
It's funny. We had a related discussion on the subject of women taking men's last names in marriage. What does that got to do with it? Well, it's another strange cultural norm that women take men's last names in marriage. I think we talked about this in our episode on masculinity and femininity. And in my post on this inspired much more discussion than I expected. So I made a point that it's a simple question. It's entirely optional. And there are bad reasons to take on your spouse's name, and this is why I think a lot of people reacted so harshly against it. Bad reasons include pressure from your family, pressure from your fiance, unthinking tradition, it's just what people do. Fear of being judged or criticized, why didn't you take your husband's last name? Social conformity, I don't want to be weird, I don't want to be seen as different, I don't want to be independent. But there are good reasons to take on your spouse's name too.
Yeah.
You may have a desire for a single family surname. I want everybody in our family to have the same last name. You don't like your name, and you like your spouse's last name. Simple logistics, forms, income taxes, job applications, reservations, all sorts of reasons why it's just handy for us both to have the same name. And it augments your view of masculinity and femininity. For some people, that act of taking on your spouse's name is as romantic as an embrace. And it is sexy as Linda Cordair of Cordair.com, Quentin Cordair Fine Art, asked if this show was safe for work. So I'm not going to say exactly how sexy it is for you to say you're going to take on your spouse's last name, but you use your own strong language for that. And there's many more reasons on both sides of this. Ultimately, the bad reasons are all duty, fear, conformity. The good reasons are it's a substantial value based on your own independent judgment. And the reason I bring that into the conversation after Chastity and Virginity is it's precisely that you've got to be first-handed when you confront these cultural norms.
Yes.
And you don't embrace them just because they are cultural norms. But you also don't reject them just because they are cultural norms.
Yeah. Yeah,
be first-handed.
Yeah, be first-handed in your thinking. Don't be unthinking, and also don't be reactionary. And Linda says, say it.
I'm not going to say it.
You can spell it out.
It's funny, too, because Yaron Brook actually... he put $1, we've joked about Yaron Brook is constantly fundraising during his show. He put $1 value on people saying, people watching this on video see the air quotes, the F word. So we should do that. We should put a price on it. And except in my case, I'd have to put a really high price, because I really don't want to break my streak of non-profanity on the show. There's been very little of it, and it's a signature Robert Nasir thing. What have I said about profanity? Swear words should be reserved for the bedroom and the battlefield.
Right.
And this, as much as it's kind of a battlefield and kind of a bedroom, it's really neither. So, topic number 3, coming out of Chastity and Virginity, masculinity and femininity. So I have to go, in talking about masculinity and femininity, 3 places. In sex, you should always go at least 3 places. First place we're going to go is the Ayn Rand Lexicon, where Ayn Rand says, for a woman qua woman, the essence of femininity is hero worship, the desire to look up to man. Oh, did that raise hackles? To look up does not mean dependence, obedience, or anything implying inferiority. It means an intense kind of admiration. And admiration is an emotion that can only be experienced by a person of strong character and independent value judgments. Okay, controversial part, but I'm going to skip to the other paragraph, the second paragraph here. This does not mean that a feminine woman feels or projects hero worship for any and every individual man. As human beings, many of them may, and in fact be, her inferiors. Her worship is an abstract emotion for the metaphysical concept of masculinity as such, which she experiences fully and concretely only for the man she loves, but which colors her attitude toward all men. This does not mean that there is a romantic or sexual intention in her attitude toward all men. Quite the contrary. The higher her view of masculinity, the more severely demanding her standards. It means that she never loses the awareness of her own sexual identity and theirs. It means that a properly feminine woman does not treat men as if she were their pal, or sister, or mother, or leader, unquote. Now that's from Ayn Rand's controversial answer to readers about a woman president.
And now, I'll tell you this.
Tell me this.
About a Woman President is an article that she wrote, I believe in the Objectives newsletter. Didn't she have some kind of qualification in the beginning saying that, a lot of these ideas that she's presenting are more psychological ideas, and they're not necessarily part of her philosophy? I know she's mentioned hero worship as part of her philosophy, but...
Yeah, I don't remember what qualifiers she gave.
Yeah.
She did incidentally say she could imagine in a culturally mixed time or in a crisis like ours, that she could imagine a woman who would choose to be president if no greater men or more able men or more qualified men were around.
Yeah.
But that it would ruin her psychologically to have to say, I am the best person in the world right now. There's no man out there who rises to my stature in this specifically political leadership position. She made the point that a woman could be the CEO of the largest, richest corporation in the world.
Right. But I think she mentioned that it would be very difficult to be in a situation where you are in control of the army and you're in control of basically sending the army to war or something along those lines.
Right, but it wasn't, again, primarily about being a leader of men.
Right.
Just being the leader of all men. Being the president of the United States was a unique position in this regard. To be able to say, I'm the most powerful person in the world. There's no man who can match me.
This does come off a little bit strange, especially.
It's very strange. It's one of the most controversial things in objectivism,
especially in this day
and
and age.
It's not objectivism per se.
When we've had so many presidents who, you think to yourself, well, I want to respect the office of the president, the person in president. I don't respect, but I respect the office. It's gotten to the point we've had so many creeps.
Yes, it's hard. It's hard to imagine
president that. Yeah. It's hard. It's
hard to imagine a woman saying, oh, what a shame I have greater stature than George Bush. Right. Oh, what a shame that I'm a greater leader than Barack Obama.
Right. And
I just can't live with the fact that I'm a better person than Donald Trump.
I don't know. I should say this. Some of what she's saying in there may not be relevant in today's time.
Well, the reason I read it is what I think is extremely relevant.
Okay, what's that?
Because you've heard me say it before. And this I learned or devised or came up with it before I even read Ayn Rand, which is a man can't love a woman, any particular woman, without loving all women somewhat, without loving what women are. I've said it before in the past, and I don't have it written out in front of me, but her point that her worship is, quoting again, her worship is an abstract emotion for the metaphysical concept of masculinity as such, which she experiences fully and concretely only with the man she loves, but which colors her attitude toward all men. Again, this is unquote, this is a feeling, a sexual, romantic, metaphysical feeling. And I absolutely understand that from my point of view as a man. I feel that about women. To love any one woman completely, you have to love women. You have to love what women are. You have to love the very idea of women.
Yeah, and I think what you're saying is something... So when I was 4 years old, I turned to my mom and I said, Mom, just out of the blue I said this. I'm like, I'm having opinions at the age of 4. I like men better than I like women. And I remember exactly the quality and the content of that statement, why I said it, how I came to that conclusion. I still remember. I liked men because they were different. I liked men because they looked great to dance with, especially when I watched John Travolta in Saturday Night Fever. And but I mean, seriously, I found that men were so much more fascinating. I mean, I loved women. As a matter of fact, that was near that same time I had the same another opinion, which was African American women are the most beautiful women in the world, and I still stand that by today. I idolized Debbie Allen, and I still do. So, but yeah, I mean, if you take it down to that more simplified view or that basic view of maybe even what you thought when you were a child, I can see that. Now, Jennifer has a question. It's really good. How is the woman's admiration for the man different from the man's admiration for the woman?
Yes. And the answer is in episode 10, our episode on masculinity and femininity. Because the difference between men and women is subtle, but pervasive.
Yeah.
Men are stronger than women. Women have capabilities that men can only dream of. And what that means for their relationships, for how we see each other, for the way we choose to dress, for the way that we carry ourselves, for the way we switch and walk, for every little thing about life. It affects everything, and yet take any one instance of that and you can say, oh, well, men do that too, or women do that too. It is subtle, but it is pervasive. It's small differences, but it's differences in every single thing. And again, there's overlap, because there are women out there that are stronger than some men out there. And there are men out there who are more beautiful than some women out there.
Yeah.
It is a little of everything, but it is a little of everything.
Yes.
Again, episode 10 of our show. If you go to robertnasir.com, there's a link to our YouTube channel where you can look that up. I would have to do a whole other episode to take it further than we did. We barely scratched the surface in that episode, but it's a tough topic.
It is.
But I can tell you absolutely that there are differences between men and women. Again, every single difference, and nowadays even including a few biological ones, you can find an example of a man who's more of that than a woman, or a woman who's more of that than a man. Again, it's everything spread out over everything.
Yeah.
Men are stronger, women are prettier. What did I say during that episode? Men march, women dance. Oh, what do you mean? Women march and men dance? Yeah, but given what they are, given our nature, given that men are sturdy, women are delicate. And so men croon, women sing. I gave 20 examples of this. It gets back to that question of prove you're a man without referring to your body at all. And it can be done.
Yeah, it's one of those things where you think, well, you can see the opposite might be true. Men can actually bodybuild enough to become firefighters and such. But in this case, when you're thinking of it, I guess it's not a bad thing to generalize and just to say this is a general metaphysical fact that women are smaller than men. They don't have testosterone. Their bones,
well, not as much.
Yeah, right. They don't have as much. Women or men don't have. I'm not entirely sure if men have estrogen
which
or
hormones?
progesterone. But, I kind of doubt that, but yeah, there are certainly biological differences.
There are substantial biological differences
that color your values.
Yes.
And one of those values is just the way your physical being is, and how that colors your choices, how that colors how you dress, how that colors how you dance.
But it's beyond that, because the cultural differences are based on real differences. So the fact that women can have babies, and that in sex they are vulnerable to pregnancy, that fact alone changes everything. And you can say, well, but I'm a woman who opted not to have children. That doesn't matter, because again, the cultural impact of the fact that women have both that ability and that vulnerability changes everything. And there's a reason why we think in terms of nurturing women or protecting women. But there are women who don't need nurturing. There are women who don't need protecting. It doesn't matter. I mean, it's great, and we admire the women who can stand up for themselves. But these differences make a difference across the board and in every way. You can resist that. You can even decide to be an exception to that, and that's wonderful. Doesn't change the facts.
Yeah.
This is a world where being a man means something. Being a woman means something. And even if you're an exception to that, that doesn't make those realities go away. But not to make the whole show about masculinity and femininity, I just wanted to make the point that we didn't touch on that as much as we meant to last time, and I had to read that Ayn Rand quote because I hadn't read it before and realized how closely it mirrored the same conclusion I had made about swap them, consider men. Men don't love women unless they love women. And a man can't love any one woman completely without loving the very idea about women. So I say without loving all women somewhat. Of course, as soon as I say a man can't love any one woman completely without loving all women somewhat, somebody says, oh, what about Hillary Clinton? Yeah, okay, I get the idea. There's some women who you don't love. Doesn't change the point. So, number 1, everything is sex. Number 2, chastity and virginity. Number 3, masculinity and femininity. We're halfway through, and time is flying. We got to go quicker here. But the chat is so good, it's hard not to answer everything.
We might have to just save this for next time.
Yeah, well, we did mention it might take a part 3.
It's going to be a sex part 3, guys.
I don't know. Should we do a whole separate show on abortion and the sanctity of life?
Uh-huh.
No, think about it and let me know what you think. I know you're finding it hard to answer that question, but let me know.
Well, I should say this. It's a downer. But it
can
doesn't
be a downer.
It doesn't have to be a downer. It doesn't have to be a downer.
And my whole point when we finally talk about that will be it doesn't have to be a negation.
Yeah.
That the topic should be an assertion of a positive.
Yes. Yes.
And not just the positive of sex is good and therefore people should be able to have abortions, which is true, but also the positive of the actual sanctity of life. We'll hold that off. Number 4 has been postponed officially because we are well into the episode. I'm going to jump right to, which means I need to skip through my notes a bit here, gay marriage. Mm-hmm. It's funny that gay marriage was a thing just a few years ago.
People were saying, Hillary Clinton was like, nah, there shouldn't be
I don't believe
in
gay marriage. That's right. Barack Obama was against gay marriage.
Right.
Until he was for it.
Yes.
And it's interesting. I've got a link in the show notes to John McCaskey's comments at the time of the debate because they were among the very reasonable ones. Although it's kind of a long essay he wrote. It is worth the read if you're wondering, well, what were we thinking back then? Mm-hmm. Or for anybody who's still thinking, oh, yeah, that was a bad idea. So, I missed my note on gender swapping last names. So you can gender swap the last name thing. There are men who took on their wives' last names. Like Jack White, for example.
Yes, that's true. And I think in Judaism, I believe, they do that.
That is a thing that happens. Yeah. But yes, gay marriage. Well, what is marriage? Marriage is a public declaration and a legal commitment to romance, shared property, shared responsibilities, including family. Oh, well, what about that would exclude homosexual marriage? Well, you tell me. The reason why most marriages don't work, as I wrote a couple of years ago, or don't work well, is that most people don't know what marriage is. Mm-hmm. Marriage is a personal, legal, and public declaration that two people are now to be regarded as a unit. Objectivists should love this, the whole idea of unit economy. We're a unit. We are one thing. We're still two people. We're still two individuals. But now we are a married couple.
We're a team.
We are a team. But that's it. That's what marriage is. Marriage is a public declaration and a legal commitment to romance, shared property, and responsibilities, including raising a family if you choose to do that. Although there are countless marriages with no children. If you know this and you use this knowledge of what marriage is, if you use this knowledge in deciding whether to marry and in how to conduct your marriage accordingly, you have a reasonable chance of success. I said at the time, marriage works well between two people because of the finite nature of time and focus and energy and values.
There was one time, I forget if it was in the Love, Sex, Romance lecture Leonard Peikoff did, where I think it was in that one, or it was his talk show.
It was on the Love, Sex, and Romance weekend that they presented. Because I know exactly what you're thinking of.
Where he's like, well, nowadays, it takes so much effort and energy to raise children, that children, he was joking, of course, but he said children might have to be brought up in, as a result of having an orgy, and you just have a whole bunch of people to perhaps, raise the child and babysit.
Yeah. Well, he also made the point, too, that the norm was monogamous marriage, but that he could see a context in which a third person could enter into a marriage situation. Mm-hmm. And then he said, well, if Ayn Rand were here, and his wife at the time chimed in and said she would slap you. One of my favorite moments in Objectivism. It was so cute, so charming.
Awesome, Amy Peikoff.
So
it's awesome.
I am a big fan of marriage. I love the idea of marriage. I love the institution of marriage. And for somebody like me, in other words, somebody rational, when gay marriage became a thing, I have to say at the time it was unsettling. As I mentioned before, I'm a staunch homophobe. Again, I'm exaggerating it. Not really. But I remember at the time thinking, this is going to shake everything up.
Yeah.
The way in which marriage contracts are implemented, the way in which insurance companies are going to have to handle things. Are they going to grandfather certain things in for businesses that do or don't opt to include those marriages in various benefits programs? Just all these complications that we're going to have.
It wasn't as complicated, I don't think.
And it turns out it wasn't as complicated.
Nope.
I'm sure there are people out there right now who are working in HR or who are working insurance who will tell me, oh, Robert, it was really complicated. Well, okay, maybe it was here and there, but
yeah, but
no, I think
it was one transition, one and done, and and there it is.
I think of all the years building up to the gay marriage transition.
Yeah, and I'm so very, very happy for it.
It was just one and done, and it was so...
I'm so happy that it happened.
I was going to say painless, and other than all of the controversy, it was. And yet, and the reason I bring it up, why do I affirm gay marriage? Why did I make this part of the conversation? There are still some people out there fighting.
Oh, yeah, right.
There are still some people hoping to turn back the Supreme Court decision. There are still people out there making the worst, crudest, most unpleasant comments about it. A couple of them are even in the objectivist community. Mm-hmm. I have yet to hear the people who are fighting on the barricades saying that allowing homosexual marriage would affect heterosexual marriage. It would be a violation of the sanctity of what a heterosexual relationship is. I must admit, having gay friends, both in person and online, knowing people in that situation has not diminished my heterosexuality in the slightest. And if I can say that, somebody as sensitive as against those things as me, then I would hope that just about anybody can say, oh my gosh, there's more love in the world.
Yes, absolutely. And there's more to celebrate in the world. there's more weddings to celebrate. There's more births to celebrate.
There are births. There's families out there.
And honestly, there are some really adorable kids being raised by same-sex marriage couples. Just wonderful. And this goes back to the whole theory of what you've talked about a lot. Is, we have ethnicities, we have genders, we have all of these differences in our lives, not as a way to exclude people, but to include them and celebrate those differences.
Yes. The whole reason to recognize race is to celebrate it. There's no other good reason for that concept. The whole reason to recognize gender is to celebrate all of the wonderful things about being a man, the wonderful things about being a woman, or being with a woman. The whole reason to have these distinctions. And gay marriage, it turns out, is just a part of this wonderful landscape of love and romance and families and relationships. Yes. And it's turned out where it's all good. I just think it's all good. I mean, there's a way to do gay marriage wrong, and there's a way to do heterosexual marriage wrong, and they're just about identical. So I'm sure somebody's going to come along and say, oh, well, there was this gay marriage, and they raised this kid, and the kid turned out confused. Somebody's going to find an example.
Right.
And I will match you chapter and verse on the heterosexual side of things.
Yeah, times 10.
Yes. And somebody will have statistics, and we can argue about statistics. It's all good. It's all been good.
Yeah.
So, number 5, gay marriage. Thumbs up.
Yes.
2 thumbs up. Oh, wait, that might be a pun. Let me put my thumbs down, but it's all good. Number 6, the last and final thing, plural marriage. I had to leap off from gay marriage to plural marriage because we also have people in the poly community. And I can't just say poly anymore because poly now means 10 different things. There's polysexual, and there's poly, what's the other big one? Not polygamist, but polyandry. Anyway, point is there are a lot of ways you can love people.
Yes.
And some folks say, well, I can love 2 people at the same time. Well, I'm married and I can do that too. Oh, wait, I said married like it only ever means 2 people. Point is, there are people out there who advocate for polyamory. People out there who advocate for plural marriage. And all I want to say about that is, good luck. Give it a shot. I mean, don't be reckless, but if that's really what you believe, as I said before, marriage works well between 2 people because of and I'm going to say this slow because every one of these is a whole hour-long topic I could give. Marriage works well between 2 people because of the finite nature of time and focus and values and energy and resources and countless other things. People joke, why would you want to be married to 2 women? It's hard enough for one man to satisfy 1 woman. And that's absolutely true, but it's not just, God, it's hard to satisfy a woman sexually. It's hard to be the man that a woman deserves in every area. And you may say, yeah, but in plural marriage, she's got other husbands, or she's just happy to share. Again, if you can make that work, great.
Yeah, that is like one of the most complex, difficult situations to try to make work.
Yes.
And the only model we have for it that is at least long-lasting or sustainable in a way is religious polygamist marriages. Where it's based on the Bible. Be fruitful and multiply, and have many wombs at your disposal.
Well, the reason I have zero trust for people from staunchly religious communities who say that is that there are too many stories of people who've escaped it.
Yeah, I know.
Incredible stories of people who said, yes, I was smiling the whole time I gave those interviews for Time magazine, but that's because we weren't allowed not to smile, or because I really believed for the sake of the children I had to smile.
It's terrible. But hey, you know what? If you are sex positive and you want to go out there more, Well,
what I wrote in my 10 unpopular truths, which I seem to come back to a lot lately, is if you if you really are the rare exception that can make a 3-person marriage or an open marriage or some other variant work, more power to you. But as with claims of the efficacy of alternative medicine or my latest crazy diet or anything else on the fringe, skepticism is proper and to be expected. I know such skepticism is annoying, but don't let it get you down. If you know firsthand you're doing the right thing, go do the right thing.
Yes, absolutely.
And
live first-handedly.
Yes. So to summarize, because we're running over here, sexuality. Mm-hmm. And we talked about definitions of this the first time, but what I'm going to say is sexuality, the coming together of individuals for the purpose of experiencing intimate physical pleasure, is good. Actually, I stole those last 2 words from Ayn Rand because Leonard Peikoff asked her once, what does philosophy have to say about sex? And she said, it says that sex is good. Mm-hmm. Now in Atlas Shrugged, she wrote, or had Francisco say, sex is the most profoundly selfish of all acts, an act which cannot be performed for any motive but one's own enjoyment. Mm-hmm. This is the longer quote from Francisco. No matter what corruption one is taught about the virtue of selflessness, sex is the most profoundly selfish of all acts. Mm-hmm. An act which a man cannot, he cannot, see the pronouns are throwing me off here. An act which he cannot perform for any motive but his own enjoyment. Just try to think of performing it in a spirit of selfless charity. Mm-hmm. An act which is not possible in self-abasement, only in self-exaltation, in the confidence of being desired and being worthy of desire. It is an act that forces him to stand naked in spirit as well as in body, to accept his real ego as the standard of value. He will always be attracted to the woman who reflects his deepest vision of himself, the woman whose surrender permits him to experience, or to fake, a sense of self-esteem. Love is our response to our highest values and can be nothing else, unquote. Now I read this because you see this throughout Ayn Rand's writing. She has an elevated idea of the values should be associated with sexuality. Mm-hmm. She doesn't believe in casual sex.
Yeah.
She does believe in sex before marriage. It's not that sex requires that. It's not an old-fashioned idea. It's simply this stuff matters. And it's funny because somebody earlier today posted an excerpt from this, the so-called sex speech by Francisco in Atlas Shrugged. And I had answered after this quote, sex is the most profoundly selfish of all acts, one which cannot be performed for any motive but one's own enjoyment. I said, and yet, in sex, one can run the gamut from being unusually, unwaveringly generous to being relentlessly self-focused and self-indulgent, to being utterly transactional, to being transcendently unified, and all manner of other variations.
Wait, where was that from?
What I just read?
Yeah.
That was a post from earlier today that I was commenting on.
Oh my goodness.
That was my comment. And my point there was that sex takes so many forms.
Right.
And yet, Ayn Rand always talks about it as it connected with your highest values.
Right.
And your most diligent standards. And what I realized in my attitude of it runs the gamut, not just from casual to transcendent, but 10 other variations on different directions. You know what I mean by transactional, for example, the idea that, like, for Valentine's Day, give somebody a sex coupon and treat it as a transaction.
Right.
or trade a foot rub for a sex act. You know, imagine that.
I remember
But the point
coupons.
Is that it can go in all those different directions, and yet, how so if it is this transcendent, amazing thing tied in with only your highest values and the highest self-esteem? And what I realized is that, and this is the point I want to wrap up with, we talked about values, we talked about ambition, and we talked about the finite nature of time. There's no time to waste. Your life is short. Your time is precious. Even if it's just stopping and smelling the roses, have intentionality, have focus, live your life like it matters, like your time is valuable. And what I realize now is that that applies here too. Even if it's a sexual relationship that you know is not going to last, you both agreed has a time limit, say you're moving out of the country, something. It matters. Mm-hmm. Even if it's just one night, it matters.
Right.
Your values matter. There are no throwaway hours. There are no throwaway days. There are no throwaway years to your life. So your sexual activities, everywhere from the range of that massage or foot rub or pedicure that even the asexual can enjoy, to the most crazy, outrageous stuff that I know more folks were hoping we'd talk more about, and maybe we will in part 3. Mm-hmm. Between here and there and everything in between, take it seriously. Not gravely, not that kind of serious, but just live it. Be passionate.
So with that, here's my definition of sex that I just wrote just recently.
Yes.
Like an hour ago. Sex is an all-encompassing spiritual and physical experience where you are not thinking about anything except receiving pleasure and reciprocating pleasure, completely in the moment with yourself and your partner. It's the most intense and intimate and trusting experience you can have with another person.
You know, it has that in common with art. It is one of the most end in itself experiences. Yes. You know, everything about your life should be an end in itself, but some things are means to ends, and hopefully there's not a whole lot of that in your sex life other than, you know, a means to make your partner feel loved, and you could call those means to ends, but sex is an end in itself. Mm-hmm. Or should be.
Yes. All right. Well, I have more to cover next time, including...
You had a lot of notes, and you haven't referred to them much at all.
Well, that's because I haven't had a chance.
Oh, sorry about that. Not too sorry, but I'm a little sorry. But we did say we'll do a part 3. Maybe we'll do... Part 3 will be...
make it up.
Amy's view.
Could be. Mm-hmm. Yes.
Yes. So the last time we talked about this, I didn't have a homework assignment for you other than get busy. And my Post-it note for the week this week says, kiss. Mm-hmm. What did I say? There are whole philosophies that don't believe in kissing, or rather, that don't believe in kissing the way kissing really is. And so my Post-it note just says kiss. So kiss somebody this week. That can be your homework assignment.
Oh my goodness.
Kiss everybody you can, but at a minimum, kiss somebody you wouldn't normally kiss, or kiss them at a time you wouldn't normally kiss them. Mm. Think about kissing. It's one of the things that some people discount too much.
Right.
If you ever hear people complain about their sex life, especially women complain about their sex life, it's probably because there's not enough kissing. And it's not about kissing. It's not about lips on lips. It's about what happens when you are kissing somebody. It's about what kissing is. It's about what kissing means. And it doesn't have to be sexual. I don't want to be queasy here about, like, kiss your parents. You should kiss your parents more. You should kiss your children more. You should express love more.
You could kiss your bunny and your doggy and your
Kiss
kitty.
your dog. Kiss your bunny. Kiss your... Well, I don't know if you should kiss your cat because you'll sneeze. Oh, wait, that's me.
Yes.
But yes, my Post-it note for the week just says kiss. I'm going to try to remember to kiss more. And that's it. That's my homework. I hope you've enjoyed part 2 of this. I'm not going to promise that part 3 is coming anytime soon, because when we skipped a week, a lot of people said, isn't this going to be part 2 of episode 69? So I don't want to make people impatient. I want to make you wait for it. No, I mean, I want to wait until the time is right. And so we're going to do that.
That's right. We're going to make it good.
We're going to make it real good. Well, it's going to be Amy's notes this time. So
well, some of them.
Some of them. Well, I'm sure I'll have more to say as well. But thank you. Thank you for joining us for this excursion into unusual and somewhat uncharted territory. Hope you've enjoyed it. I will, I got to catch up on, I missed a lot of the chat today. I was just talking too much, which I guess is why you've been answering the chat and haven't gotten to your notes as much. But yes, thank you so much for being here. Thank you for being part of episode 69, part 2. Reminders, show notes, including links to the websites and resources we discussed, even a few that we didn't discuss but are well worth taking a look at, including the celebrations for the week, the celebrations for the day, notes on how to cheer somebody up who's feeling lonely.
Yeah.
A link to our episode 10 on masculinity and femininity, John McCaskey's essay, and more. Links to all of that stuff will be in the show notes. They will be posted within minutes after the end of the episode.
Like that.
Like that, or damn close to it. Oh, I said damn. I meant water over the dam. We don't swear on this show, remember. We're keeping that G rating on the Apple podcast app and other places too. Questions, comments, suggestions, curses can be posted Kisses can be posted in the 5 Minutes with Robert Nasir Facebook group. Also, any suggestions for future episodes, we would love, love, love that. If there's anything you think it would be amusing or informative or inspirational or even infuriating but exciting to hear Robert and Amy talk about, bring it on. If you like what we do, you want to keep us going, help us reach more people, a wider audience.
Yeah.
On that YouTube show.
Spread the love.
Spread the love. Like the show, share the show, subscribe to youtube.com/Robert Nasir. Ring the bell. Excuse me, ring the bell. You'll get notifications every time we go live. Mm-hmm. If you'd like to support the show financially, and thank you so much to those who do. We picked up a couple more patrons this month. Mm-hmm. Thank you so much. If you'd like to support us financially, the links to our Patreon for monthly contributions and paypal.me for one-time contributions, thank you again, you know who you are. Links are at robertnasir.com. That's right, one-stop shopping for every link you need, robertnasir.com.
I put that in the chat, on both chats.
Thank you so much, Amy, and as always, a huge thank you to the people who are already supporting us financially. We hit a milestone. I won't say what it was, but it was significant. We'll have a celebration for that soon.
Yes.
So yeah, shouts out to everybody who's already on board. Thank you.
Hugs for patrons.
Thank you all of you for listening. Thank you for being here. Thank you for the people watching on YouTube. That was kind of cool to see. Also on Facebook Live. We got to get those YouTube numbers up. And they are, slowly but surely, between this and our Thursday show, Life on Earth. Things are looking up. Let's keep it up. Thank you for joining us. And that's it. We wish you success. We wish you happy. We wish you happy. We wish you happiness. Excuse me. I'm losing my voice now. Been talking too much. You should have talked more.
Yeah, so
for part 3, Amy's going to get her mouth going.
It's wonderful to see you all, and you can stop talking, Robert. And we all wish you love.
Yes, we do. Mwah.